Hi there. My name's Erika Spiker. This is my deck. I piloted it to a top 4 finish at SCG Dallas's Pioneer 5K event this last Sunday. I think it's October 9th. And I think it's really good. And I kind of wanted to do a deck tech on it because a couple of people asked me some questions. And also I just kind of wanted to debrief myself a little. So, I'm new to this. So let me know if there's any like technical issues because I'm borrowing my roommate's mic. Or if you want to hear me ramble less or whatever if I ever make any videos in the future. Before I go over any of the actual deck lists, I kind of wanted to get into the philosophy of a little bit of it a little bit. So our shell here is banned humans. It's a mildly toolbox aggro deck. You know, it, contained within the humans tribe. Perhaps, obviously. So that means that in Pioneer, that means we're a collected company deck. Collected company is a really busted card. Sees a lot of cards. Lets you get a lot of value off of enter the battlefield triggers, and that's kind of the glue that holds their deck together. And our general plan here is to attack and disrupt. I've got this little slide here. So attack and disrupt, I kind of mean rather we don't want to be permissive. Like a lot, like say, like a red aggro deck. We're a white aggro deck. We have a little bit. Actually, compared to mono white, we have a lot more grind power and a lot more muscle. Our 3-drops are noticeably like really good compared to mono white. But we are an aggro deck, which means that we want to go fast and end the game. So our opponents can't combo us or go over the top of us. This generally means that we have to use tempo to our advantage a lot. We're very tempo based deck. It tends to we tend to care a little bit more about tempo than we do about cards. Not to say we don't care about cards. Drawing cards is pretty great. But tempo is still pretty important. Or tempo is generally more important, and we'd rather have their creatures off the board than have more cards in our hand than they do. And so generally, like the plan is, generally the plan with this deck, at least in my opinion, to play to the deck's strengths. We want everything to be a threat. This means that generally there's not too much dedicated defensive removal. I'll get into that a little bit later. But kind of the way I wanted to build this deck is things on sticks tribal. So we have things that are hopefully like medium to large threats. That hopefully also have a disruptive effect. So. Hold on a moment. Sorry about that. Anyway, we generally want to generally want to create a medium-sized board of generally medium-sized creatures that can hold their own in combat, and kind of go through our opponent. Clearing a couple things out of the way, but not necessarily trying to wipe our opponent's board before we go in for the kill. The thing that's different about my deck from most other banned humans from most other banned humans decks is that it is splashing black. Now I think the black splash is probably better than just straight banned right now. And most of that is I think it's just the black cards are good, especially against the current meta. So, our main black cards that we have are we have General Kudra of Draneth, He's a very powerful lord, who also happens to be main deck graveyard hate. We have Graveyard Trespasser in the sideboard, which is just, a very good sticky threat. Rakdos midrange plays it, black mono black midrange plays it, and werewolves are humans on their front side, so it's kind of a free roll. We have Tenacious Underdog. We have a 1/0 Tenacious Underdog in our flex slot. And we have access to cards like Kumbal, Console of Allocation, and a couple of other flex slots. Like Freebooter and Sin Collector. Actually, I don't know about that. So, with that, I guess let's go into the deck list a little bit more. Because as you can kind of see, there's a lot of 2-ofs. I believe I counted 11 2-ofs across main and side, and it kind of looks like horse shit, to be honest, compared to a lot of Banned Humans lists, which have very clean, like, 4-ofs, 4 Werewolf Pack Leader, 4 Experiment 1, 4 Extractions, 4 Prince, 4 Specialist, stuff like that. But this is intentional. I have a lot of 2-ofs that I want to kind of see, and it's even our deck is pretty fine on its own if we don't hit that specific card, because we're diversifying our threats and our answers. But we can kind of dig for them a little bit, because this deck has a little bit more card selection than it looks, actually. So to start with the 1-drops, we've got 4 Hopeful Initiate. This card is just kind of the best 1-drop that we've figured out in the deck in recent years. It grows starting on turn 3, usually, because we don't have any aside from Lieutenant. We don't have any. So we have Lieutenant, but all of our other 2-drops are 2 power or greater, so it'll grow starting on turn 3. 2/3 for 1 is already pretty good. A 3/4 or a 4/5 for 1 is really good, like really really good. And on top of all that, it's a gosh darn disenchant on a stick later on, which is very useful in it's often just flavor text, but it's very useful in matchups like Greasefang and Sacrifice. Usually it's a little bit more relevant against Sacrifice, because Greasefang can play around Hopeful Initiate by just killing it. But it's still pretty nice to have. I also have 2 Experiment 1s. Now Experiment 1 is often a 4-of in other Banned Humans lists. This is because it's a really good Magic card. But I figured that Initiate was generally better than Experiment 1, just because its toughness gets higher than 3 pretty fast. That said, it is still usually a Wild Nacatl by turn 3, which is good. it's good. What can I say? You'll notice that this deck has 1 fewer 1-drop than most Banned Humans lists. Most of them have 8, sometimes 9 or 10. This one has 7. As I said, this deck has a little bit, or I don't know if I said this actually, but this deck has a slightly higher curve. I just kind of wanted to maximize value a lot of the time, and it's kind of okay if we don't have a 1-drop play. Sometimes. Anyway, our last 1-drop is Kytheon, who's usually kind of mid. But on the rare occasion that he does manage to flip, he is a powerhouse. He'll give you an indestructible blocker, and later on he'll attack himself as a 4/4 that is also indestructible. So he's kind of there to play to the ceiling a little bit rather than the floor, but I still think the card is worth including, because a 2/1 for 1 is not that bad at the end of the day. Okay. Alright, now onto the 2-drops. We've got 3 Charming Prince, a lot of lists run 4, but I think 3 is fine. Charming Prince is mostly started people mostly started running it because of its interaction with Extraction Specialist. If you reanimate a Charming Prince with an Extraction Specialist, it can blink your specialist and bring back another 2-drop or less from the graveyard. Allowing the prince to attack to boot. So that's pretty good for rebuilding after a board wipe or something of the sort. But on top of that, he's also just really good card selection. This is what I meant when I said this deck has more card selection than it looks. Charming Prince scries too. He allows you to keep a lot of 2-landers. To find your 3rd land. Finding your foot. Keep a mediocre 3-lander to find your 4th land and get company to dig out of your mold of 5 or whatever. I've already been talking a lot. But we are nowhere near done. But yeah, Charming Prince is just really good, and he can actually. There's a lot of because this is a Coco deck. We're building with a lot of ETB effects, which means he can get quite a lot of value if you're trying to very slowly beat a board stall or just trying to block for a little longer. He can blink a lieutenant. He can blink Extraction Specialist, as I said. Let's see. He can blink Elite Spellbinder. Reflector Mage. Blinking a Reflector Mage, I swear, feels like cheating. That interaction is insane. It gives you an even more of a tempo swing. Out of the sideboard, he can blink. I think that's actually it. Yeah, that's kind of it. But still, blinking a Reflector Mage, gross, ridiculous. And also just gaining 3 life is pretty relevant in aggro matchups, which are already good for us just because of the way our deck is built. But gaining 3 life against a mono red deck and undoing a skew with the critic's worth of damage never hurt anybody. So, in fact, it healed us. 4th Ollie is Lieutenant. One of the best cards ever printed for the tribe. Should need no introduction. Just a really good, a pseudo lord that's also a champion of the parish. What more could you ask for? 3 Thalia. Do you guys have a Discord where I can ask questions about my gender? She's just a good magic card. Is kind of core to the plan of attack and disrupt, and isn't even half bad against other aggro matchups. Sometimes you want to cut her, but usually I don't, especially in matchups like the mirror, but also against red, red slings some non-creature spells, but also Thalia has first strike, which lets her just straight up win combat a lot of the time, which is just kind of silly, kind of crazy and funny. Just a really good magic card. And we got the 4th one in the sideboard. You don't want to leave it home without it. We have 2 Werewolf Pack Leader. Most iterations of this deck just run 4, but I think Disrupt is pretty important. We are an attack and disrupt deck. This one just attacks. It doesn't disrupt. We want to mostly attack but disrupt a little bit, so I'm a little bit heavier on the disruption disruption, or at least digging for disruption. Charming Prince sees cards immediately, whereas Pack Leader only starts drawing cards the next turn, if that. At best. So, I just cut it to 2. It's really good to have a beat stick sometimes. Just a big fat 3/3, that's fine. But it's often not the best option that we want to have at the time. Whew. And then our final 2-drop is Tenacious Underdog. Again, just a 1-drop that's kind of mediocre some of the time against a lot of matchups. I will cut him against a lot of matchups. I also cut Kytheon occasionally, in case y'all were wondering, and go down to 6 1-drops. It's just fine. Kytheon is pretty bad in a lot of matchups. And so is Tenacious Underdog, that's fine. But he's also insane in matchups like Rakdos. If they don't manage to to exile him with a trespasser or something. He just keeps coming back. And yeah, he's just a really annoying. He's just a little annoying threat that that is kind of free to just kind of throw in your deck, and occasionally beat down with him. So with that, we can move on to the 3-drops, I think. Oh, yeah, sorry. Don't worry about these. These are just like test scribbles that I made when testing my microphone, and I forgot to delete them. So just ignore them. Anyway, under the 3-drops, we have 4 Reflector Mage. The best removal ever printed for this archetype. For this tribe, I mean. But also, good enough to be banned in Standard. Because of how good he was in banned company shells. Like this one actually. Just with a little less synergy. A kind of often just straight up time walks your opponent if they have multiple copies of the creature in their hand. And it's just generally the card that allows this deck to be called a tempo deck. Like it's the card that makes me comfortable calling a build of humans like this a tempo deck, because it gives you 2 free turns to attack. That's awesome. Yeah. We've got two legendary humans. We've got Adeline, and we've got Kudro. So Adeline is your tallest threat in this deck. This is very often 6'4" or larger. If you hit like her and a lieutenant off of a Coco, she'll become 5 toughness easily. She's pretty darn hard to kill. Against a smaller deck than you. Against a bigger deck than you, she's not quite as much of a problem. But if they ever run out of blockers, they are toast. So, even if Adeline's getting blocked, that allows your human tokens to get in and stay alive and get wider. That allows all of your other like medium-sized and larger creatures to punch through. Adeline is just a very good threat. She's the reason that we don't have to run Mantis Rider, or that we don't that we don't have to feel bad that we're not running Mantis Rider. We probably shouldn't be running it anyway, but Adeline is still, again, Adeline allows us to not feel bad about that decision. We've got 2 General Kudro down here. General Kudro is a true lord. Other humans you control get +1/+1, simple as that. Means he's usually the first guy they have to kill before they can start like really dealing with the other creatures in combat. And also he just main deck Graveyard Hate, which is pretty good against the meta right now. It beats it's really good against Greasefang, obviously. It's good. I mean, it's like okay against a build of creativity that I've seen that happens to be on my mind because I lost to it. He's good. He's like not completely dead against mono green because you can exile something like a Storm the Festival, or whatever they're planning on reclaiming with Cavalier of Thorns. And he's also removal. I very rarely have used the sacrifice clause unless I'm on the back foot, but it's still nice to have there occasionally, especially if your opponent's putting all their eggs in one basket. We have 2 extraction specialists. Again, a lot of lists just go up to 3 or 4, but I think our threats are useful enough that, barring a true board wipe, I don't really care too much about this interaction because we can win in combat without having to reanimate our creatures most of the time. That said, Extraction Specialist is a really good magic card, especially in this deck. Reanimate a Charming Prince. More often than Charming Prince, I've just seen reanimating the Lieutenant, which is crazy on its own. Makes Specialist a 4/3 right off the bat. 4/3 lifelinker. Great card. Once that's dealt with, the creature that you reanimated is back. Specialist is just a good magic card, and it's kind of part of the core of this deck now. I couldn't. You cut it in some matchups, but in the main deck, I don't think I can. I don't think you could justify cutting it anytime soon. And then for our flex slots, we have 3 Anointed Peacekeeper and 1 Elite Spellbinder. So, this Spellbinder was supposed to be a 4th Anointed Peacekeeper when I brought it to. Whoops. When I brought it to. When I brought it to SCG Dallas. But I just didn't have a 4th Peacekeeper, so it's kind of a placeholder. It was still occasionally pretty good. Anointed Peacekeeper is generally better nowadays against the meta because it's slightly less dead against Rakdos game 1. Because it's 3 toughness, it doesn't get stomped. And it is really good against both Greasefang and Mono Green. Against Greasefang, it can actually, the best thing you usually, like, depending on what's in their hand, obviously, but most of the time, the best thing you actually want to name is whatever vehicle you think they can go to in the graveyard, or is already there, because it makes the crew ability cost mana, which is kind of silly, but it keeps them from going off on turn 3 if you're on the play, or, whatever, or turn 4, or whatever. Anyway, it's a really good magic card. Against Mono Green, it can name a Planeswalker, most importantly. Yeah, it's pretty good. I think, at least Spellbinder, you want to run more of those, like maybe a 2-2 split. I don't think I could see more than 2-2 at the moment. But you want to run more Spellbinders if you're seeing, if you're seeing a lot of like just decks with flyers, if you're seeing more Spirits or more Phoenix pop up, which I could see happening pretty soon, especially Phoenix. I think whatever, I don't want to speculate. I think I just heard some stuff about Phoenix being good. It did make it into top 8 with me, so anyway. Yeah, this is the 3 drops, and then 4 Coco, duh, right? You don't really need to hear me explain this card. I will say that usually we're not trimming on this card, especially in this deck. A lot of decks will play a couple of things like portable holes in the side or whatever, which I don't agree with. I think this deck can probably get by on just creatures, so pretty much you're always sticking to 4 Coco. Like the never cuts generally are your non-Kytheon 1-drops, your lieutenants, usually Adeline, and Coco. Like those are and often Kudrow, usually Kudrow. So those are like the cards you never want to cut. Yeah. Onto the sideboard. Actually, let me talk about the mana base a little bit real quick. We kind of have... I kind of forgot to talk about this, but I think that shocking yourself is just not that bad in the current meta. The mono green matchup is won by miles, not by inches. Same is true of the Greasefang matchup. And if Rakdos is trying to race you, they will lose. That's just not how they should play the matchup. They are the control deck here. So, and also you're not gonna get punked by mono red or Atarka red. That's not too likely. Not because the decks aren't good, but because the matchup is free. It's just a really good matchup regardless. Just because you have blockers for days, your deck is blockers tribal basically. And also just a lot of your creatures have lifelink. Charming Prince can gain life. Extraction Specialist has lifelink. Dennick has lifelink, which is really funny. Graveyard Trespasser gains life. Kumbal gains life. I think that's it. But yeah, the deck is running 7 shocks. Could be 8 if you want to replace the slow land. My mana base is Season to Taste, but you probably want to keep approximately the same amount, or the same number of black and blue sources. just a little bit over half the mana base. You want this one basic in case of, a random Assassin's Trophy, a random Set of the Wreckage, some shit like that. And I think a basic Plains and a Beseiju is a hell of a lot better than a basic Forest and a Ganjo. Just because Beseiju hits matchups that you are worse against. I know Beseiju locked a game against Greasefang down for me because I was attacking for lethal, and they used their only 2 creatures to crew their Sky Sovereign to attempt to block, and I just top decked Beseiju and killed them. That was cool. But yeah, you can also use it defensively. You can blow up fucking treasures against creativity, whatever they're comboing with. It's really funny. It's good against sacrifice, stuff like that. Beseiju better than Aegonjo right now. With that, I'm gonna catch my breath a little bit, and then we can move on to the sideboard. Alright, let's take a brief look at the sideboard. So what I brought to SCGCon with me was what I brought on Saturday. I was expecting Rakdos, I was expecting Monogreen, I was expecting Greasefang. I saw a lot more Greasefang than those other 2. So I boarded pretty heavily for Greasefang. That's why I ended up with these Peacekeepers in the main board, rather than Thalia main and Peacekeeper side, which is kind of half the Peacekeeper's side, which is what I was originally planning. But yeah, this board is mostly for Monogreen and Greasefang and random stuff, and a little bit of Rakdos here and there. The Rakdos matchup is already pretty good. I'd say it's favorable for us. It gets slightly worse post board because they just have a lot more stuff to bring in than you do, or than we do. But it's still favorable, and it takes a lot more effort to win the mono green with Greasefang matchups than it does the Rakdos matchup. Anyway, I think the core sideboard cards you mostly always want to have in this deck. You have Unlicensors, the best graveyard hate ever printed. Has made it all the way to Legacy in terms of playability. And becomes a threat later. Unlike Rest in Peace. Rest in Peace is really good. I could see you just running Rest in Peace to shut the game down. But I just like it when everything's a threat. That's kind of the other reason that portable holes are not in this thing. You can usually just beat your opponent's threats with your own even better threats. Even against Monogreen, trust me. Reflector Mage beats Old Growth Troll, no contest. But that's kind of the reason that I'm not running stuff like portable hole in this deck. Is just it's not a threat. It doesn't attack your opponent for damage, and kill them. So, anyway, Unlicensors, Tormod's Whip, exiles graveyards, becomes a car, or car turns on later. Really good magic card. Graveyard Trespasser. This card, I love Graveyard Trespasser. It's if I were really greedy, I'd put it in the main board. But I think our main board hate against mono green and Greasefang is probably better, especially mono green. It's probably better to be hand based. Because our game 1 against mono green is really not that good. That said, Graveyard Trespasser is probably one of the best mid-range threats printed in the past couple of years. It has ward discard a card, and it gains you life a little bit, exiles your opponent's stuff a little bit. Just kind of does everything that you want a mid-range threat to do. And then we have the 4th Thalia. Again, don't leave home without it. Although you can leave home without it if you're not really expecting to see many other non-creature decks. I wouldn't board in 4th Thalia in a deck you expect to win combat via first strike in. It's mostly for non-creature matchups like Phoenix and creativity and Greasefang. Actually, I don't remember whether I boarded fourth Greasefang. Definitely did with mono green. Not necessary with Rakdos, but still fourth Thalia there just in case you need it. And here's my hot take of the evening, is that Augur of Autumn is an insane Magic card. It's just your best grind piece, by a pretty decent margin. I know this card looks kind of weird. If you've ever played a Goblins deck with Conspicuous Snoop, you probably know it's serious business. But otherwise, like, just trust me, bro. Right? It's kind of like that, like, if you don't want me to explain it, if you still don't really get it, just don't worry about it. I just think it's a little like the coconut PNG in the TF2 game files that makes the game crash if you remove it. It's just like a good card, that I think is just really good against mid-range decks and against control, and against any game you expect to go long. It's card advantage. With that, flex slots. 2 Denic. This guy's a Silent Gravestone on a stick. He's also a 2/3 lifelink for 2. That means he's good against graveyard decks. He's good against mono red, which is really funny. I get, like, it's not like fully intentional. He just kind of randomly, like, you can throw him in there. He has a backside. It's not very good. I wouldn't expect to cast it. I think reanimating him with an extraction specialist is probably more likely than casting his backside. And also, like, his backside also doesn't actually stop anything. It just, like, lets you investigate some stuff. So I wouldn't recommend it, honestly. I would hold on until you get an extraction specialist. Anyway, surprisingly good Corked Up White Boy. He's kind of there to diversify versus unlicensors. If you cast him on turn 2, he does not get Witherbloom commanded, whereas unlicensors does, at least until after turn 2. Just because your Experiment 1 or your Hopeful Initiate can't crew a hearse and make it a creature non-land permanent for Witherbloom command purposes. Both of them die to a Braid, so that's irrelevant. But yeah, Denic is just pretty good. I've been surprisingly impressed with them. Especially just as your 2-drop threat that they have to deal with before you can move on to your 3-drop threat, or before they can move on to your 3-drop threat. We have 2 Kumbal. I think this was actually a bit of a mistake going into SCG Dallas. There aren't that many. There are fewer decks than usual that get hit by this. Mono red and mono red is one of them. Atarka red is kind of not one of them. Honestly, it does not have nearly as many non-creature spells as traditional Eidolon Chandra Dress to Kill mono red does. But that said, don't forget about this guy. He's kind of the first cut for a card I'm going to talk about in a second, but he's still theoretically a good card. If Phoenix becomes like tier 1 again, shove him back in. Trust me, he's good. He lets you attack on multiple axes. Letting you attack both your opponent's mana and their life total directly. Just a good Magic card. Annoying Magic card is kind of what we're going for here. Radiant, God of the Worthy. Card has a lot of text. You barely even have to read it. Like, it just has a lot of text. It's good against control. It's good against creativity. There's another one. It's good against mono green. That was the big one. That's just the front side. Back side, good against mono red. Completely hoses Sacrifice. It just destroys Sacrifice. So cool. I haven't come up against a Sacrifice deck in months, like since last semester, but It's good to keep in mind. I'm sure y'all fight to sacrifice more often than I do. But yeah, Radiant's pretty good. I gotta say, I never actually cast her when I was at SAG Dallas. I think she just was the card I drew the least is all. Not just kind of a variance moment. But yeah, Thalia, Heretic Cathar. Card's insane. Is a hoser against mono green. If you really want to put her in the main board, you can, and she's not the worst versus Rakdos game 1, but she does get stomped a little bit too easily for my liking. She's a 3/2 first striker that that time walks your opponents. Or not, it doesn't time walk. It doesn't time walk them. I think people say that too much, but it makes it really worsens your opponent's tempo if you're playing the mirror. Not half bad against Greasefang. Like, it's better than Reflector Mage against Greasefang, so you should at least like swap those out. She's just a surprisingly good card. Like if you've ever played her in Legacy or Modern, she's probably a little bit underwhelming, but trust me, this is where she shines. This is kind of the format for her at the moment. And then finally we have one Tomic, Quirked Up White Boy number 1, 2, 3. I don't think that guy's white. That's an NB, I'm gonna guess. That's not a boy, that's a man. Hold on, 1, 2, 3. That's a gal, I think. 4, 5. He's Quirked Up White Boy number 5. Anyway, he just straight up hoses mono green as well. Not completely hoses. But he makes it so Kiora can't target Nykthos. And he also, the other thing was, he also makes it so they can't cast Wolf Willowhaven, which is pretty funny. And also he just randomly hoses Lotus Field as well. Not hoses, obviously. Pour Over the Pages beats it. But, you know, it's still really good. Because the untap target permanent thing doesn't net mana. Like, because it doesn't work. Anyway, funny card, actually came up in both of my mono green matches and was insane both times. You know, you don't have to run him if you don't want to, but I found him really good and just a clean swap for Tenacious Underdog. In the necessary matchups, and just surprisingly annoying. Right, kind of the game plan of this deck is to stack annoying creature on top of annoying creature on top of annoying creature, so that they can't really, like, any one of them is just kind of a nuisance, but 3 or 4 of them is a huge problem. That makes them unable to play the game, so that you get to play the game. And you get to beat them. So, yeah. So that's the list. I'm gonna talk about flex slots in a second. I just want to talk about matchups, and the reason this deck is good. The reason this deck is good is because Rakdos midrange is good. This deck is better. Green Devotion is good. This deck is better. Greasefang is really good. It's kind of scary game 1. Not gonna lie, but it eventually you get better after game 1. White Humans, it's even, maybe it's scary actually after game 1. Banned Humans, hopefully should be on the rise. Like if you look at, some of these decks are just not very good right now. You know, look at Lotus Field. I don't think I've seen anyone play Lotus Field. Sorry, bye. Creativity is probably gonna get better. Phoenix is probably gonna get better. Incarnation is a deck that I've seen pop up. I assume it's a good matchup. I don't know, but it's probably better. But like the only front page of MTD Goldfish or whatever, the only deck that looks like a really bad matchup is Spirits. Just because they're kind of the same deck we are, except that they fly and we don't. So they just win. Right. Um, but I haven't actually played the matchup, so I couldn't. This is mostly speculation. I assume it's bad. But one of y'all is gonna have to play it and let me know. But yeah. Anyway, I think this deck is like secretly like tier 1.5 or like tier 1. It's a little bit underplayed. I think a lot of players are just have their like dog cones on, and they're just like, cause they got no, this metaphor doesn't work anymore. Anyway, everyone's looking at mid range and devotion and greasefang right now, and most traditional aggro decks are really not very good against any of those. Aside from like red's pretty good against greasefang, I guess. And there are some builds of red decks that are pretty good against mono green. But usually it's pretty bad. Anyway, this is an aggro deck that does beat all of those decks. Or at least not only is it winnable, most of the time it's pretty good. Also game 1 against greasefang, like if they don't have the combo, like if they don't have the nuts, you can eventually get a lockdown if you get like a lucky Kudro or something. Let me take a breath. I've been talking really fast. Okay, let's just go over these flex slots real fast. There's a couple. I just collected a couple cards that I think are funny. Some of which are worth talking about. Some of which probably aren't, but I thought I'd throw them in anyway. Just because there are also a couple mistakes I think I made in my deck building. Going to SCGCon this weekend, if I were to run it back with a similar deck, or at least actually what I think my 75 should be right now, is the sideboard should absolutely have Brutal Cathar for the mirror. And also mono green. It's mostly mono green. I need to stop talking about the mirror. It's really not that prevalent. But Brutal Cathar, I was pretty low on Brutal Cathar for a while because most decks just ran a bunch of removal. Phoenix was still really big because Expressive Iteration was still legal. Rakdos and Gen midrange were pretty good already. Brutal Cathar just didn't have a lot of targets at the time. But now he does. Mono green is the boogeyman. So I think what I'd do is I'd probably cut 2 Kambal, maybe 1 Raydane, I don't know, for maybe the Spellbinder actually. Maybe take 1 Spellbinder out main and 2 Kambal outside and replace them with Brutal Cathar. Maybe only 2 Brutal Cathar. Anyway, it's Fiend Hunter, especially a Fiend Hunter that can do it twice, is hella good right now, turns out. So, I'd put this guy back in your deck. Do it now, please. I just did earlier, like yesterday. Card's good. Bring it back. I know most of y'all are playing that. I just kind of didn't, and I did miss him for sure. Glad he's back. More extraction specialists, I totally get it. If you want to be a little bit more mid-rangey and grindy and toolboxy, another extraction specialist, or 2, didn't really hurt anyone. I just think that disrupting is better than trying to build up. You just want like 3 or 4 guys that are all really annoying is kind of what you want to go for. Elite Spellbinder instead of an Peacekeeper, I can see it. Depends on your matchups. Also Sin Collector. Someone in the Humans Discord mentioned this card. I shouldn't have opinions on things before I play the card. If it's good, play it. Or if it's good in your experience, play it. This is just my deck. I'm not the ultimate authority on things. Sin Collector looks a little bit small, but its effect is permanent, which is pretty good. I think it's a little too specific though, right? Anointed Peacekeeper on turn 3, he's a Fire Extinction Revoker. And turn 4. For Grease Fang. Which is exactly what you need there. And Sin Collector doesn't do anything there. I just don't really see where you'd put him in at the moment. Him? I haven't looked at the art. I don't know what the Sin Collector is. But it seems I could see it being okay in your local meta. Depending on what you're coming up against. If it's a lot of control, if it's a lot of it's better. It's not better against Monograin, I don't think. I think Peacekeeper's probably better. Just as a temporary tempo thing. But Sin Collector, I could see it being good. What else have we? Hold on, I need to do some check marks here. Okay. Other 3-drops. A Lagrella. I don't know. I guess run it if you want, but I think Brutal Cathar is probably just better. I think removing your own creature is just not great. You're kind of 2-for-1ing yourself. It's like a 2-for-2. It's really weird. I don't think I'm into it. I've heard some of y'all enjoyed this card, but I don't think it's probably not worth it. I don't know. Shanna. I was initially high on this card. Then I tested it, and it just kind of doesn't do anything. It doesn't have any active disruption effect. It's not very good in that slot. It's good on an empty board, but all sorts of other things are good on an empty board. So, and empty... not just that. Empty boards just aren't very common right now. Honestly, Pioneer is a very board-based format. So, I really don't think that Shannon is very good right now. Maybe in another meta, but I'm just generally not very high on the card. Chalice Tracker, it's a good card, always has been, always will be, hopefully. But you probably have better options at the moment. I don't think I'm super high on it at the moment just because it gets stomped. If you're trying to grind right against Rakdos, she just dies too easily. That's really the only issue, right? Whereas you need 5 mana to have her not get stomped immediately, right? Whereas Augur of Autumn dodges that. It dodges a little bit of smaller removal off the bat, right? Chalice Tracker draws your cards, right? But also, card selection is not really something. Card selection is just as good as card draw in this deck, and generally, and card draw and going to the if you're going to the late game, you probably lose just because Rakdos will have a Fable or something that can grind value and beat you down better than you can Coco out of it or whatever. So Chalice Tracker probably I could see it being playable. I'm just not super into it right now. Other 3-drops. Ether Channeler. It's bad. Don't play it. It's like a 2/1 that does. Usually it does an effect that's not. It does 1 of 3 effects, none of which are really what you want. None of which are really very powerful. It looks really good, but I just don't like it at the moment. I don't like it. Charming Prince is better. Basically, is kind of what my argument boils down to. Last 3-drop. Hamlet Vanguard. My boy, my baby boy. My beef slab. Those are baby boy and beef slab are 2 very different things, but I love Hamlet Vanguard. I wish so badly that it was good right now. It's a very sticky threat. Ward 2 is good. It's huge, but it doesn't have trample. It's kind of just a worse Adeline, basically. But I love him. I wish I didn't feel bad whenever I played this card. I wish it didn't feel like a meme. But please, one of you play Hamlet Vanguard for me. Don't let your memes be dreams. I love this guy. He's so funny. You should play him just for the meme. Yeah, and one more 3-drop. Absent Falconer. I could see it as a one. I could see it as a one of, especially against spirits and against the mirror. If you're seeing a pattern here, most of the cards that are against the spirits are also good against the mirror. But yeah, Absent Falconer gives you guys flying, breaks up board stalls. Hella good card. I've seen it. I've heard it. Is played in Modern Humans a little bit right now. Yeah, I might actually try this card again soon, if I can play some more Paper Pioneer soon. Yeah, card's great. Yeah, and then we've got a couple 2-drops. Cathar Commando, if Sacrifice or Ensoul ever become popular again, Cathar Commando is gonna be great. It's just not super great right now. Like it's like I could kind of see it against like Greasefang, but it's just it usually just doesn't line up very well. Most notably, it gets Witherbloom commanded, like that kind of sucks. But yeah, I like it. It's a very good card. Definitely don't forget about it, but hold on to your copies of it. But it's mostly for another meta. Kitesail Freebooter is just bad at the moment. But also in general, like it's like good on paper against a lot of decks, but in practice it does not beat down as hard as you want it to. And it also in the matchups it's bad in, it's really bad in. And this card is usually like played in a split between main and side. And you against Rakdos, you absolutely do not want this card in your deck. But against Greasefang, it's mediocre to bad, I guess. It's like medium minus, as Thraven you would say. But yeah, Kitesail Freebooter, it just does not line up right now. This is not the format for it, at least at the moment. I'm pretty low on, I'm probably lower than a lot of people are on this card. Duskwatch Recruiter, good grind piece actually. Compare Tireless Tracker, except you get guaranteed a creature if you see one, obviously. It's a little bit slow right now, I think. But if Control ever becomes big again, play this card. I used to run 4 of actually, or 2 main, 2 side, I think. But this card is actually pretty impressive. I would actually recommend it. Just not in this meta. Scheming Fence, big fan of this card. Have never cast it. Good against Planeswalkers. The reason it's not on my list is that it's not good against Mono Green's Planeswalkers, because they can just play a second one. It does say non-land permanent and not non-land card name, so you have to name that permanent specifically, and that only really works if they only have 1 copy of the Planeswalker. I'm saying Planeswalker because against a lot of activated, this is good against Sack as well, actually. So that's the thing, but mostly you'd see it as just like a pithing needle on a stick against Planeswalkers. But yeah, it is a good card. Just a little bit niche and not for now. Selfless Spirits, not a human. Good board wipe protection. Not now. You don't really need to worry about board wipes that aren't Extinction Event right now. So it's not a huge deal. Most of your board wipe protection is just Extraction Specialist stuff. But Selfless Spirit's pretty good as a 2 of, or 3 of if Control becomes really big again. Control's just not very big right now. Again, don't forget about this card. Do know that it exists. But again, not really the time. Yeah, and then finally, I'm just gonna explain a couple of cards I'm not running. I already explained why I'm not really running any dedicated defensive removal. done with that. And then, so generally you just don't want to play anything that isn't a threat. So, I forgot to talk about Shaper's Sanctuary, but I feel like Shaper's Sanctuary, because it's a 1-drop, might be the exception to the not a threat rule, just because it does draw you cards and lets you play stuff on play stuff on turn 4 or 5 that you might not otherwise have gotten to. Let me know how it goes, because I don't know if this card would be good in my shell. I suspect it's probably kind of mid, but I could see it being good, so at least try it. Let me take another big deep breath. Okay. Yeah, don't run wimpy creatures. Catilda is, I think you already figured this out already if you've played humans for long enough. But the upside of Catilda letting you Coco on turn 3 is just not enough. Like, she's a 2-mana 1/1. That's pretty bad. I would not recommend running Catilda. And just generally other like wimpy creatures. I talked about Sin Collector being a 2/1. That's not great. Ether Channeler is incredibly underwhelming. Like, if Ether Channeler were like a 3/2, I could totally see running it. But it's just tiny. You want to be able to win mid-range combat, especially in a Rakdos meta. So and in a fucking monitoring meta. So like the base power on top of your creatures matters a lot. So that's mostly why I'm not running creatures like Freebooter or Catilda right now. They just block. They block piss poorly, and they are pretty darn underwhelming on the attack. Defensive hates, rip, needle, ley lines. There's other stuff that I'm forgetting. Tormod, like I guess like a Tormod script or something. Or that's bad when we have rip, but I like Weathered Runestone or something, which I wouldn't recommend running because we're an extraction specialist Coco deck, but still. Not a threat. Don't run it. Basically, that's again. Shaper Sanctuary might be an exception. Run that. Maybe let me know how it goes. And protection / removal a la Valorous Stance, or just protection a la Heroic Intervention. That's it. Don't shit. Those can be stuck in your hand if they don't have the board wipe and they're dealing with your creatures otherwise. Or at least they're kind of mid. And they're not just like a creature, basically. Like if you're really like in a local like very control heavy meta, just run like a Selfless Spirit or something. That should get the job done a lot better. Yeah. And so don't run anything that can't attack generally. That like I know you're looking at Wedding Announcement. Wedding Announcement does attack. That said, I think it's a little bit slow. Something that a lot of burn players will say is like you're comparing when you're considering how good a hate card is or a sideboard card is, you have to consider it in relation to a mainboard card like a lightning bolt. You're basically comparing it to a lightning bolt variant most of the time. And Wedding Announcement here, we're comparing to we're comparing this to Haymaker's like Reflector Mage and like Adeline. We have a lot of options is the thing, and we have a lot of really good and really specific options. Wedding Announcement is really good against Rakdos. That said, I don't know if we need it. Like, Rakdos is a pretty okay matchup. A 2/2 is good, but let's say they play a Fable on turn 3, and you play your wedding announcement turn 3. Turn 4, chapter 2. Turn 3, chapter 3. Turn 4, they start. Sorry, what did I say? Turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, they get to activate their fable. Turn 3, you make your guy. Turn 4, you make your guy. Turn 5, you make your guy. Or draw a card or whatever. It's honestly better to make your guy usually. But their turn 6 is when they get their first fable activation. If you're on the draw, obviously. This card is a lot better on the play. Turn 7? Sorry, your turn 5, you have some 2/2s. Or 3/3s. That's pretty good. But consider this, they could be dead by their turn 6. That's better. That's a lot better. You generally want to kill them before their fable gets too scary. So, wedding announcement just is really good, but like I've been insanely impressed with the card in other contexts, but it's a little bit too slow for my liking, and I wouldn't run it, especially because it gets taxed, and like occasionally it'll have something like Simic land, tribal land, and won't be able to cast it, or sometimes it'll cost 4 mana, which is even worse. So just keep that in mind. No hate if you're running this, but I don't think I like it as much as just like another creature. Maybe that's just a smooth brain thing to say, but I don't know. And then Mantis Rider, you might, we're running 4 colors, you say, why not run 5 colors? Because we have Adeline. Anyway, I don't know why I even put Giant Killer and Thraven Inspector. Those cards don't really need explaining. Thraven Inspector has always been an okay card, but it doesn't grow, it doesn't disenchant. You have to pay mana to draw your card. It's just not the best 1-drop anymore. Giant Killer is an annoying card, sure, but it doesn't attack, which is kind of the job you want your 1-drops to do. It doesn't attack very well, which is kind of the job you want your 1-drops to do. So yeah, I don't know why I even put those down here, because they didn't need explaining. I explained them anyway, but they didn't need explaining. So that's about it. But yeah, that's my deck. Sorry this has been an hour. Feel free to watch me on 1.25 speed. I should have said that at the beginning of the video, but yeah, that's the deck. Please, go play it. Let me know what you think. I think this deck is maybe a little bit of an open secret, honestly. Like, Banned Humans is not very popular for some reason, but everyone knows it's good. This deck's great. Go play it, please. Let me know what you think of it. Did you love it? Did you hate it? What would you rate it? With that out of the way, I'm gonna go catch my breath because I've been talking too much. So, I'll see y'all next time. If there's next time. I don't make videos for a living. I just wanted to record this for fun. But yeah, later.